If you are over 60 and you jump out of bed the second your eyes open, stop whatever you are doing for the next few minutes and hear this first. Because what I am about to explain about the first 10 minutes after you wake up could genuinely change how you start every single day from here on out. And it has almost nothing to do with willpower or discipline. It has to do with something happening inside your cardiovascular system that most people have never had explained to them clearly. Here is the plain truth. Heart attacks and strokes do not happen randomly throughout the day. They cluster heavily in the first few hours after waking. Researchers have documented this pattern for decades. And while the exact reasons are still being studied, the leading explanation centers on something called the morning blood pressure surge, a natural sharp rise in blood pressure, heart rate, and stress hormones that happens as your body transitions from sleep to wakefulness. For most people, that surge is a normal, healthy part of starting the day. But for some, especially adults over 60 who are already managing blood pressure or heart health, that same surge becomes the exact window where a heart attack or stroke is statistically most likely to occur. My name is Dr. Nyra Harrison. I have spent years specializing in senior health and preventive wellness. And today I am going to walk you through 4 completely ordinary morning habits that can make that natural surge more dangerous than it needs to be, along with simple, realistic adjustments that work with your body's rhythm instead of against it. Stay with me through all 4, because the third one surprises almost everyone who hears it, and the fourth one is the habit I see skipped more than any other, even though it may be the simplest fix on this entire list. Before we go any further, subscribe right now and turn on the notification bell. I create content like this every single week, calm, practical, evidence-based, designed specifically for the health realities of life after 60. I do not want you to miss what is coming next. And drop a comment below. Tell me, do you jump out of bed immediately when you wake up? Or do you take a few minutes first? I read every single comment, and your answer helps me understand exactly what this community needs. Before I walk you through the 4 habits, you need one concept, because without it, nothing that follows will fully make sense. I call it the morning vulnerability window. Here is what is actually happening inside your body in the first hour or so after you wake up. 3 things specifically. First, your blood pressure does not wake up gradually alongside you. It spikes. Research using 24-hour blood pressure monitoring has consistently shown a steep, rapid rise in blood pressure in the minutes surrounding waking, distinct from the more gradual pressure you experience throughout the rest of the day. Second, this is not only about blood pressure. Your body also releases a surge of stress hormones, including cortisol and adrenaline, as part of the waking process. Those hormones further activate your cardiovascular system, increasing heart rate and how hard your heart is working, right as that blood pressure spike is also happening. Third, and this is the part most people have never heard clearly explained, several large studies have found that an unusually steep or exaggerated version of this morning surge is associated with a meaningfully higher risk of stroke, specifically in older adults with existing high blood pressure. Researchers who have studied this specifically have found that an exaggerated morning blood pressure surge is associated with roughly a 30 to 45% increase in cardiovascular risk compared to a more typical gradual morning rise. That is a meaningful difference, and it is specifically tied to how steep and sudden that surge is, not just to someone's overall blood pressure numbers throughout the day. 2 people can have similar average blood pressure readings and still face different levels of morning risk depending on how sharply that pressure climbs in the minutes after waking. Here is the cascade this creates. You wake up and your blood pressure and stress hormones begin climbing on their own as a completely normal part of being human. Then certain morning habits, jumping up suddenly, an abrupt temperature shock, caffeine hitting an already activated system, I arrive right on top of that natural surge. Adding additional cardiovascular stress during the exact window when your heart and blood vessels are already working harder than usual. Layer enough of these on top of each other, morning after morning, year after year, and you are asking your cardiovascular system to handle its most vulnerable hour with the least amount of support. Keep the morning vulnerability window in mind as we go through each of the 4 habits today, because every single one connects back to this same natural surge, either working with it gently or adding unnecessary strain on top of it. Picture your cardiovascular system overnight as a river flowing gently and calmly at low volume while you sleep. Your heart rate slows, your blood pressure dips, everything settles into a quieter rhythm. Waking up is like a dam opening all at once, redirecting a rapid, forceful surge of water back into that same river within minutes. That surge is necessary. It is what gets you up, alert, and moving. But a river that has just received a sudden surge of water is also more vulnerable to pressure on its banks, right at that moment of transition, compared to when it is already flowing steadily. Your blood vessels experience something similar. The sudden shift from the calm of sleep to the surge of waking puts brief but real additional pressure on your arteries, particularly if those arteries are already somewhat stiffened or narrowed from years of blood pressure or cholesterol concerns, which becomes more common with age. Now that you understand why this window matters, let us look at exactly what makes it riskier. 1 habit at a time. The first habit: jumping out of bed immediately after waking. Let me tell you about a patient of mine. Harold was 69 and had done the same thing every morning of his adult life. Alarm goes off. Feet hit the floor, straight into the day. Most people think getting up quickly is simply a sign of energy or discipline. Nothing to think twice about. That is not the full picture. When you go from lying flat to standing upright quickly, gravity pulls a noticeable amount of blood downward into your legs almost instantly. Your cardiovascular system needs a moment to adjust blood vessel tone and heart rate to compensate and keep blood flowing adequately to your brain. This adjustment happens automatically, but it takes a few seconds to catch up. And doing it abruptly right on top of the morning surge we just discussed asks your system to manage 2 rapid adjustments at once instead of 1. This combination is part of why lightheadedness or brief dizziness upon standing, a phenomenon called orthostatic hypotension, becomes noticeably more common with age, and why it carries real consequences, including a meaningfully higher risk of falls, beyond just feeling briefly unsteady. It is worth knowing what this actually feels like, since it is easy to dismiss as simply not being a morning person. A brief dimming of vision upon standing, a few seconds of unsteadiness, a feeling of your heart briefly racing right after getting up. These are all common signs of this adjustment period being pushed too quickly. Most people experience some mild version of this occasionally, and it is nothing to be alarmed by. But if it happens consistently most mornings, or if it is severe enough that you genuinely worry about losing your balance, that is specific and useful information to bring to your doctor. It may point to blood pressure medication that needs adjusting, or it may simply confirm that this exact habit change is worth prioritizing. The practical fix is simple. When you wake up, iway enditi now ein. Sit on the edge of the bed for 1 to 2 minutes before standing. Let your feet touch the floor. Take a few slow breaths. Give your blood pressure and heart rate a brief window to stabilize before asking your body to fully transition to standing and moving. The mistake most people make is treating this pause as unnecessary, something only frail people need to do, when in reality, it is a simple, low-effort habit that works with your body's natural adjustment period instead of rushing past it. Harold tried this for 2 weeks. He told me at his next appointment, "Dr. Nyra, I cannot believe something so simple makes such a difference to how my mornings feel. The second habit works on a completely different mechanism, and this one surprises almost everyone the first time they hear it clearly explained. Drinking coffee on an empty stomach first thing in the morning. Let me tell you about Dorothy, 72 years old. Her morning coffee had been the very first thing she reached for every single day for as long as she could remember. often before she had had a single sip of water. Most people think coffee's effects on the body are essentially the same no matter when you drink it. That is not quite accurate when it comes to timing relative to this specific morning window. Caffeine is a stimulant that activates your sympathetic nervous system, the same fight or flight system already ramping up as part of your natural morning surge. And research has consistently shown that caffeine produces a measurable acute rise in both blood pressure and heart rate shortly after consumption, an effect that tends to be more pronounced in people who do not drink caffeine regularly and somewhat blunted but not eliminated in habitual coffee drinkers. The concern is not that coffee itself is dangerous for most people with healthy hearts. It is the timing. Drinking it immediately upon waking means the caffeine's own stimulating effect lands directly on top of the natural surge already happening, rather than after that initial surge has had a little time to settle. You are stacking two separate cardiovascular activators directly on top of each other during your body's most sensitive window. The practical fix is straightforward and does not require giving up coffee at all. Drink a full glass of water first thing when you wake up. Give yourself 20 to 30 minutes before your first cup of coffee. That is all. A 20-minute delay costs nothing, and it works with your body's timing instead of against it. Dorothy resisted this change for weeks. She told me, Dr. Nyra, that morning coffee is the one thing I look forward to. I understand that completely. I am not asking you to give it up. I am asking you to move it 20 minutes later. When she finally tried it, she told me at her next appointment that she had not realized how unsettled her heart had been feeling in the mornings until it stopped. Has your doctor ever specifically talked to you about the timing of your morning coffee in relation to your blood pressure? Drop a comment and let me know. You would be surprised how many people watching this have never had that specific conversation, even if they have discussed blood pressure at length. Now, everything up to this point has mattered. But what I am about to share is where the real conversation begins. These are the two habits people come back and tell me changed how they think about their entire morning routine, not just their heart health specifically. The third habit is taking an extremely hot or extremely cold shower immediately after waking. And this is the one that genuinely surprises most people the first time they hear it laid out clearly. Let me tell you about Frank, 70 years old. He had taken pride for years in starting every morning with an intensely hot shower. The hotter, the better, as a way to wake himself up quickly. Most people think shower temperature is purely a matter of comfort and personal preference with no cardiovascular relevance. That is a significant gap in understanding. Sudden, extreme temperature changes trigger genuine, measurable cardiovascular responses. Very hot water causes your blood vessels near the skin to widen rapidly, which can cause blood pressure to drop somewhat suddenly, particularly as you step out of the heat afterward. Very cold water does close to the opposite. It triggers a rapid constriction of blood vessels and a sympathetic nervous system response, similar in nature to the fight or flight activation we discussed with caffeine, temporarily raising blood pressure and heart rate. Either extreme on its own is a manageable adjustment for most healthy cardiovascular systems. But layering either extreme directly onto the already active morning surge asks your blood vessels to make another significant rapid adjustment during a window where they are already working harder than usual. There is an important reason why this matters more with age specifically. Younger, more flexible blood vessels generally adjust to rapid temperature-driven changes quickly and without much strain. Blood vessels tend to stiffen somewhat with age, a normal part of the aging process, which means the same rapid adjustment that a 30-year-old's cardiovascular system handles easily can ask significantly more of a system that has less flexibility to work with. This is not a reason to fear a hot or cold shower. It is simply why easing into a temperature extreme, rather than starting with it immediately, becomes a more meaningful precaution as we get older. The practical fix is genuinely simple. Use a lukewarm shower, particularly for the first several minutes, rather than jumping straight to an extreme temperature the moment you step in. If you enjoy a hotter or colder shower as part of your routine, save that for a bit later in your shower once you have eased into it. Within just a few days of easing into a lukewarm shower rather than an extreme one, many people notice they actually feel steadier and more clear-headed getting out. It is a small shift, but one that tends to be noticeable almost immediately, which makes it an easy habit to maintain once you try it. If you have any diagnosed heart condition, uncontrolled blood pressure, or a history of stroke, this is a conversation worth having directly with your doctor. An individualized answer is more useful than a blanket rule. And now we arrive at the fourth habit, the one that changes the conversation entirely, the one I see skipped more often than any other on this entire list: not drinking water after waking. This carries real weight because, unlike the other three habits, this one is not about avoiding an extra stressor. It is about actively supporting your cardiovascular system during a window when it needs that support most. Here is why this gets overlooked so consistently. It does not feel urgent. There is no obvious sensation prompting you to drink water first thing, the way thirst might prompt you later in the day. So it is easy to reach for coffee or simply start your morning routine without giving hydration a single thought. But overnight, even during normal sleep, you lose a meaningful amount of fluid simply through breathing and through your body's ordinary overnight processes, and you go roughly 7 or 8 hours without replacing any of it. That mild overnight fluid loss means your blood volume is already slightly reduced right as your body is asking your cardiovascular system to manage a significant pressure surge, adding one more layer of strain onto a system that is already working harder than it will for the rest of the day. You do not need an elaborate hydration protocol. Here is what the evidence actually supports: a full glass of water, roughly 8 to 12 ounces, as the very first thing you do upon waking, before coffee, before anything else. This single habit supports healthy blood volume right as your cardiovascular system is navigating its most demanding hour, and it pairs naturally with the pause from habit one, giving your body a moment to hydrate and stabilize before you are up and moving through your day. A practical tip that makes this habit easier to actually stick with: keep a glass of water on your nightstand the night before, so it is the very first thing you see upon waking rather than something you have to get up and find. Small friction points like having to walk to the kitchen first are often the difference between a habit that sticks and one that quietly falls away after a few days. If you take a diuretic or blood pressure medication that affects your fluid balance, mention this habit to your doctor at your next appointment. Not because it is dangerous, but because your individual fluid needs may differ slightly from a general recommendation. Before I give you the 30-day challenge, I want to leave you with something you can bring to your very next doctor's appointment. I call it the Morning Heart Safety Checklist. 5 questions, and any good physician will welcome every one of them. First, based on my blood pressure history, is my morning surge something we should be specifically monitoring? Would home blood pressure readings right after waking be useful? Second, given my current medications, is there anything about morning timing, coffee, showers, getting up, that I should be handling differently? Third, I have sometimes experienced dizziness or lightheadedness upon standing in the morning. Is that something we should be evaluating further? Fourth, is my current caffeine intake and its timing appropriate given my blood pressure and heart health specifically? Fifth, are there warning signs specific to morning hours? Chest discomfort, sudden weakness, vision changes that I should treat as an emergency rather than waiting to see if they pass? Notice that none of these 5 questions ask your doctor to do anything dramatic or unusual. They are designed to connect the dots between your existing blood pressure history, your current medications, and this specific morning vulnerability window we have spent today walking through. Most physicians appreciate a patient who arrives with focused, specific questions because it makes the conversation more efficient and more useful for both of you. Here is your challenge for the next 30 days. Build these 4 small adjustments into your morning one at a time if that feels more manageable. Sit on the edge of the bed for 1 to 2 minutes before standing. Drink a full glass of water before your first cup of coffee, waiting 20 to 30 minutes in between. Start your shower with lukewarm water rather than an extreme temperature. And treat all four of these as one connected morning routine rather than four separate rules to remember. Write down today how you typically feel in the first few minutes after waking: energized, foggy, occasionally lightheaded, whatever is honest. Revisit that same question in 30 days. You do not need a perfect morning, you need a consistent one. And the difference in how your mornings feel by the end of 30 days will genuinely surprise you. If you want to track this more concretely, a simple home blood pressure cuff taken right after your 1 to 2 minute pause on the edge of the bed gives you an actual number to compare over time. Even a basic reading every few mornings noted in your phone gives you and your doctor real data to look at together, rather than a vague sense that things feel better. There is a real difference between healthcare that reacts to a cardiac event and healthcare that quietly reduces the odds of one ever happening. Mornings, specifically the first hour after waking, are exactly where that difference plays out, day after day, whether anyone is paying attention to it or not. So much of cardiovascular medicine focuses, understandably, on the big levers: medication, major dietary changes, exercise programs. Those all matter enormously, and nothing in today's video is meant to replace any of them. But the morning window we have discussed is one of the few places where a genuinely small 5-minute adjustment intersects directly with a well-documented period of measurable cardiovascular risk. That combination, low effort paired with a specific, well-understood window of vulnerability, is rare enough in medicine that it is worth taking seriously, precisely because it is so simple, and precisely because it costs you nothing to try starting tomorrow morning. You have probably never thought of your morning routine as a genuine piece of your heart health, something separate from diet, exercise, or medication. That is not the full picture. And it is not what I have seen in years of working with people exactly like you. You are not doing anything wrong by how you have started your mornings until now. Most people have simply never had this specific window explained to them clearly. You have every right to understand what your body is doing in that first hour, and every right to make it a little easier on itself. Start tomorrow morning with 1 glass of water and 1 extra minute sitting on the edge of the bed. That is genuinely all it takes to begin. If this video gave you something useful today, please subscribe if you have not already. And share this with someone you love who is over 60 and managing blood pressure or heart health. The information is free. The adjustments cost nothing, and the difference they can make over time is genuinely meaningful. Tell me in the comments, which of these 4 habits are you going to start with tomorrow morning? I read every single comment, and your commitment below might be exactly what someone else needs to see to make the same decision. I am Dr. Nyra Harrison. Take good care of your heart. It has been working for you every single morning of your life, and I will see you in the next one.